Can you click Natalia? Can you click on it? Okay, now we want to go to that one yet? Okay. So you're going to say something? Yeah.
Everyone, thank you so much for coming over today's event, Walking with Yogis, Mystical Encounters in India, organized by Georgetown Interfaith Society in partnership with the Department of Theology and Religious Studies. And we are excited to host today Dr. Ariel Glucklich. And before we begin, let me briefly introduce the speaker. So Dr. Ariel Glucklich received a PhD from Harvard University based on research conducted in Pune, India, and later spent 2 years working in Jerusalem. An acclaimed scholar of Hinduism and the study of religion, his work explores mysticism, magic in India, religious experience, and the psychology of ritual and embodiment. Dr. Glucklich has written on Banarasi's folk religious traditions, the meaning of ritual pain, pilgrimage, the inner logic of religious systems across traditions. After spending several years in Varanasi, he joined the faculty at Georgetown University in 1997, where he teaches Hinduism today and chairs the Department of Theology and Religious Studies. He's the author of The End of Magic, Sacred Pain, The Strides of Vishnu, and many other books. His latest book, published this year by Cambridge University Press, is Religion, Dissonance, and System Theory, Comparing Spiritual Traditions. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for coming. So this is going to be a conversation in the chat, not a lecture or that kind of thing. I have to say, I was curious a few minutes ago, and I'm still curious. It's hard for me to resolve as to why Hamo is sitting by the door. It's almost like he wants to escape.
I thought you were punishing him.
Exactly, I would not.
Has he not finished his dissertation?
Yeah, we'll punish him after he's done. So thank you everyone for coming. Very nice of you to come. And as I said, this is going to be a chat rather than a straight up lecture. I'll talk for about 25, 30 minutes, and then you can ask questions. You can stop me in the middle and ask for clarification as it comes up. And I have to say that I came back from Benares. We call it Benares. Technically, it's Varanasi, but in Benares, it's Benares. With a big folder with slides and all kinds of objects, and I can't find it. So when Natalia asked me to do this, I panicked. I looked everywhere here, I looked everywhere at home, I couldn't find it. So everything I'm going to talk about today is a lie. No, not everything, 70%. I had to, in a sense, reproduce visual imagery. But of course, if I had my slides, I would have had to convert a slide to, so that too would save me that particular trouble. So, okay, so I'll get started. My first and most important agenda is to de-exoticize, say, aghoris, for example. That in the image that Natalia used, a very attractive image for this event, there's a picture of a aghori. And the aghori is a 16th, 17th century sect, Shaivite sect in India, with headquarters in Varanasi and Benares. And what they're famous for, known for, notorious for, is contradicting the rules of purity, which are a dominant feature of Hinduism. So when you look at them, they're usually carrying a skull, which they use for their food bowl. Their begging bowl is made out of a human skull, which they obtain in the cremation grounds. And just that in and of itself is outrageous to the average Brahmin or Indian who follows the normal rules of purity and impurity. And I have to say that the rules of purity and impurity in India still today are very strongly binding. And then there are other kind of features of aghoris. but you're going to see that I de-exoticize them. I didn't go to Benares to get high, although a lot of people do, because hashish is legal in Benares. I didn't go to Benares to somehow depersonalize myself, to become more Hindu or more of a mystic or what have you. My personal bias, my personal philosophy is Vedantic. But I was studying for a long time Vedic texts, particularly Atharva Veda, dealing with magic, magical formula and magical acts. The Kaushika Sutra is a text that is associated with all kinds of rituals that are designed to make life better through magical performances. And so I decided that, having done research in that text, I decided that I wanted to see if those magical practices still exist in India today. So I applied for a grant, got the grant, oddly enough, and went and stayed in Varanasi for almost 2 years, comparing almost 2,500-year-old magical rituals to what's going on in Benares today. Let me explain what this is. Samskaras, there are close to 20 samskaras, rites of passage in Hinduism. This one is for pregnant women. If you type in Google, garbha is the womb. Okay, so if you were to type garbhadhana samskara, you will see contemporary images of women at clinics and so forth and so on. But if you go back 2,500 years to the Kaushika and the Grihya Sutras, the text that interested me, you will see all kinds of exotic and interesting, fascinating rituals. For example, when she is pregnant for about 5 months, there is a ritual in which the practitioner will take a porcupine quill and run it through her hair a specific number of times with a Atharva Vedic formula that is supposed to guarantee the safe delivery of the child, the safe pregnancy and a safe delivery. I have to tell you that 70% of all the magic in Varanasi and Benares is related to procreation, to getting pregnant, to staying pregnant, to having healthy children. So these kind of things motivated me to go to Benares rather than personal personal spiritual quest, for which, by the way, I don't believe you get a grant. So Aghori, so exoticizing the Aghori. So this is an image that you will see of Aghoris, in the Ganges. And this particular one is a fairly tame one. I didn't want to reproduce another image with the skull. It's fairly rare that you would see in Benares an Aghori with a skull. They tend to be in remote areas. But some of the Shaivite features, by Shaivite I mean in pursuit of the god Shiva. God Shiva is a very complex god associated both with procreation and with death, associated with cremation grounds and so forth. So some of the features of this man's hair and beads are clearly Shaivite, that is related to Shiva. And so this is about as formidable an Aghori as you might see in Varanasi. On the other hand, you might see one like this too. And that's a cigarette. It's not hashish. Many of the practitioners in Benares will use hashish, sorcerers and healers and so forth. And the researcher who wants to spend days with them has to smoke hashish. So this is 1992 to 1994, when I think my organism could still handle that. So there was that. But this would be an example of an Aghori who is not given to the extreme representation of breaking the rules of purity. Okay. On the other hand, one of the things that you will see with Ghoris is this is Manikarnika Ghat. A few words about the Ghats. Varanasi, Benares is a city along the Ganges River where the Ganges River takes a bend and it goes north. Overall, it goes from northwest to southeast of the Bengal Bay of Bengal, but along the way it bends, and Benares is on the bend on the east side of the bend, and so along the river there are these ghats. The ghats refer to the steps that descend to the river. Where people go bathing. The Manikarnika Ghat is famous and notorious for this is where the dead are buried, are burned. Okay, so this is the cremation ground in Benares, and Aghoris like to hang out in cremation grounds, usually at night, when they're empty, where there's nothing going on other than the remains of a person who might have been cremated earlier in the day. Some of the Aghoris are also sorcerers, okay? And I'm going to speak to you of one sorcerer who was an Aghori who looked like this. This is what he looked like. You couldn't tell that he's a sorcerer, and you couldn't tell that he was an Aghori, but he was. And he worked out of a small house where people came with all kinds of issues. For example, my daughter disappeared, or my son disappeared. I don't know where they are, or I'm having problem with tenants, or all kinds of issues like that. And he is a much feared man who I cannot photograph. Obviously, I wasn't able to photograph him. I spent about 2 or 3 weeks in that little house of his, in the living room where there would be room for about 25 people. So you come in, you sit on the carpet, and you listen to what is going on, people presenting their problems, and he solves the problem. And he is a feared man, and I'll tell you why he's a feared man. I was told that he has supernatural powers or some kind of extraordinary powers, so I decided to test it. Some of you might have heard about my test with this sorcerer. I have a friend who lives in Israel who told me that he was about to get audited. And so I told the Aghori this fact and asked, is there any way to stop the audit? He said, there is, but I need a picture of the auditor. And if you have a picture of your friend, that would also be good. So I got in touch with my friend. He sent me a picture of himself. He could not produce the name of the auditor, but he sent me the name of the head of the department. This is in Israel. And I brought it to the Aghori. And the way the Aghori works is he goes to the Manikarnika Ghat. Okay, so he goes there in the middle of the night, and he'll sit there right at the cremation ground, and he invites the spirits of departed individuals who whisper in his left ear the assignment that they're being asked to perform. And so he did this, and he told me a couple of days later that he did this. And then a few days after that, my friend got in touch with me and told me that the head of the department had passed away. So obviously I'm not given to beliefs in supernatural causality, but I understand the aura that surrounds this individual, and you can imagine how people feel about somebody who has a reputation of someone who can kill. There was something that I heard about these two men had a fight over money, and one of them, and who owed the other one a serious amount of money, left Varanasi, left Benares, disappeared in order not to pay his debt. About 7 years later, he came back, and people saw him and they said, "What, you're still alive?" He said, "Why shouldn't I be?" And they said, "This sorcerer had cursed you to die." And within a few days, he in fact died. And again, I'm not given to supernatural causality, but I am given to a certain kind of the social impact of expectations and their effect on organisms. Although the one with my friend in Israel is beyond bizarre. So the way he worked, this Aghori, well, not him, but a man very much like him, the way he worked, he would sit in the room and 3 or 4 people would be talking to him at the very same time. He would be focusing on several conversations at the same time, and people weren't aware that he's talking to several people at the same time, gathering information, okay? And then when he had his insight, his answer, his relief, his whatever, it was the product of very keen social understanding and the capacity to absorb diverse information at the same time in such a way that individuals who weren't aware of what he was doing thought that he possessed supernatural mental powers. My task as a researcher fascinated by magical rituals was to understand the mind of the individual who believes in magic, who experiences magical causality as something real, my task was without reducing it to mere superstition, looking at it as a social, psychological dimension, which is fascinating in a place like Benares, because there's so many layers of it happening at the same time. So this is the hidden Aghori. The other thing that I saw in Varanasi, the first time I saw it, I completely freaked out. What it says here, "Yahan jinat bhut nikal jate hain." So what it says is here spirits and the dead are expelled. What that means is exorcised. Okay, so there's a place just outside Benares called Baba Bahadur Shahid, a Muslim saint, is buried there, and it's a place that's regarded as a particularly powerful place for exorcising the spirits, bhut or bhut-pret, the spirit of some kind of possessing being. 90% of the possessed are women. 70% of those are young women. And the first time that I saw it, what you see is a woman in a state of convulsion with hair wild. The normal Indian woman has her hair tightly braided and split in the middle. This wild hair and the body play, sometimes the body play being almost as though it's mechanical with 2 halves of the body working in opposite directions, was something that I felt somehow compulsively magnetic, and almost something that draws you out of yourself. But then I've seen dozens of them, maybe even 100 of them, and started talking to the families. And what the story is a young woman, usually 17, 18, who suddenly changes her behavior. She describes a force that entered her body, and she goes to the Ojha or Sokha, who is the exorcist, who drives the spirit out. But as a result of the conversations, that too I de-exoticized and started to see that it's a family drama. It's simply a question of family drama. So you have a girl who finishes high school and she doesn't want to get married. Her parents want her to get married. She does not want to get married. She wants to go to college, but she's stuck. She is stuck in this role. She has no control over her life whatsoever. So involuntarily, then something happens to her. She breaks, if you will, and she starts behaving in a way that's extremely sexual and extremely violent, extremely crude and sexual. Those two dimensions of a Hindu woman's life are like the Aghori who breaks the rules of purity. She is completely violating the expectations, and the account, the explanation for it must be that she's possessed. So what is she possessed by? Who is she possessed by? An aunt? A grandmother? Maybe there was an aunt who never got married, or a grandmother who never got. She's not possessed as you, those of you who have seen the movie The Exorcist, and are thinking of some kind of ancient Egyptian evil spirit. It's not that. It's a family situation that plays out. And so the exorcist negotiates with the spirit. What do you want in order to leave? It doesn't look like it. It looks violent. It looks exotic, but it's not. So she will say through her weird voice, I want to go to college. Or, well, the ghost is saying she wants to go to college, but you will settle for some lipstick and new shoes. And then it's driven out. It voluntarily leaves. And so what appears to be something in Western mythology to be a supernatural event is a social drama. So that's that. Now to a slightly more comic element. This is the courthouse, the municipal courthouse in Varanasi. And it's a great place to go if you're interested in magic. In the backyard, there's all kinds of magicians working because people who are going into the court are suffering from anxiety, and they need relief. So one day, these two would-be brothers came around and they said, we're selling magical rings, and we're going to prove to you that they're magical. If you wear them, two rings, if two people wear one ring and another ring, you can read each other's thoughts. So one of them laid down, and there were a bunch of guys, all men, standing in a circle, including me. And one of them lay down on the floor, and he was covered completely with a blanket, and a ring was on his stomach. And his brother wore the other ring, and he walked around, and people would take, say, a rupee bill or 100 rupee bill and so forth, and hold it, and the fellow on the ground would state the number, the serial number on the bill. When he got to me, he said, "What do you want to? How do you want to test it?" I said, "How about my wife's name?" So he said, "Okay, what is it?" So I said Debbie, which was a lie, and he heard Devi. So the fellow on the ground said Devi, and then he moved on, and of course it blew me away. And later on, I was thinking, how did he do this? And it occurred to me that he kept a constant stream of chit chat. He was talking and talking and talking and talking. At no point did he say, "This guy's wife is Devi." But I remember that the first 2 or 3 words that he said when he was next to me, "Dekho Sadmi." Look at this man. Okay. And then I thought that there must be some kind of the dei, that there was some kind of a phonetic clue that he was giving based on that chit chat. And so they were very good, they were very clever. And so after it was all done, I went up to them and I said, "Are you guys brothers?" He said, "No, we're not brothers." Said, "How many rings have you sold?" And he said, "All of them. They're at 10 rupees per ring." And so I bought two. There were two left. So I could imagine some place, maybe not Georgetown, but some place where people would say, "Yeah, I wonder if it works." I can't read your faces, but they don't work. They don't work. But they worked in some way. In some way, they did work. So that would be a fairly kind of typical performance that you get in Varanasi, be it for court magic or for health and other kinds of agendas. Okay, this gentleman, his name is Sambho. Sambho had a reputation of being able to hold his breath for an hour underwater. So I decided to test him. I became quite friendly with Sambho because I lived in Asig Ghat. Asig Ghat was one of those ghats along the river. And whenever I had free time, I'd go to the river and he had a boat. And so I got to know him and he would cross over with me to the other side and we became friendly. I said, "Sambho, I heard that you can dive for an hour underwater for a whole hour. Would you prove it to me? Can you prove it to me?" So he said, sure thing. We had this little red container, plastic container. We went in the middle of the river and we filled it up with water. I tossed it in and Sambho went into the water. And he came up about 70 seconds or so later without it. I said, "Were you not able to find it?" He said, "I'll find it, no worries, I'll find it." I asked him, "How long do you think you were in there under the water?" And he said, "About 15 minutes. He thought he was on about 15 minutes, not the full hour, but 15 minutes. It was about 70, I was measuring about 70 seconds. So I don't know what to make of that. You can decide what to make of that, but he was not lying. This is his perception of time, some whole. A yogi. Okay, so I got to know a yogi, rather advanced yogi, very well, who had all kinds of claims that he invited me to test and to check up on. For example, the pulse test, okay, where he completely stops his pulse. The only way I could check his pulse was here behind the ear, which is a fairly sensitive place for testing pulse. I couldn't find any. It's entirely possible that he was capable to arrest his pulse. He also told me that he could make his fingernails and hair grow before my very eyes, grow long before my, I didn't see that. And then he did something else that very few people can do. Empty a bucket of water through his rear end. So body control. There are other claims that he made about his hair, about his strength. It's not as though I walked around in Benares inviting people to prove their powers, but that there's an aura in Benares of power. That is to say that there is a sense that if you're spiritual, your spiritual manifests in certain abilities. You don't have to be a yogi. You could be an ojha or a sokha, a sorcerer or a healer, and so forth. And when you do the kind of work that I was doing for about 20 months, you get the sense that they know each other and they want to assert their value by impressing the foreigner with what they perceive to be their extraordinary abilities. Yeah, even a yogi. The astrologer and the stone. So I had a really bad stomach. Had some major issue with my stomach. So I went to an astrologer. The traditional astrologer does all kinds of things. So he made this for me. I don't know what the stones are, but this is designed for me to put on my skin, and the stones are connected to constellations, some of which apparently have a negative effect, evil influence would be the term. And this was meant compassionately to heal me. And what it cost me was about a pound of rice, of uncooked rice, maybe 2 pounds of uncooked rice, rather than money. Very rarely do folks like that ask for money. It's almost always a gift, like rice or some other kind of object.
Did it work?
Eventually I got well. It's hard for me to say. Yeah. I spent time with a sorcery wholesaler near one of the ghats. I don't remember the exact ghat. He had a shop, and sorcerers come and buy implements for their sorcery. For example, a sorcerer came and told the owner of the shop that he has a problem with a client who owns an apartment, and the tenants in the apartment refuse to leave. And the laws in Benares favored the tenants above the landlord, and so he came for some kind of help. So the owner of the shop took from a jar 2 porcupine quills, and they went behind the shop where he told the men how to use them, including the mantra. And then he came back and the other men paid and left. And I asked, how is this supposed to work? And he said, well, you grind the porcupine quills into powder, and you take the powder and you place it under the bed in your apartment where they sleep, and then they'll leave. And so I asked, why would that happen? And he said, because porcupines are notoriously, the male and the female, these are male and female, are notoriously quarrelsome with each other. This guarantees that the couple will start fighting, they'll get a divorce, and logically then they will leave the apartment. Obviously, I have no idea how that turned out. And he had a large number of items that he sold to sorcerers. Some of the sorcery was what you'd call black magic. Some of it was protective magic, black magic. This would be an example of that. This here, okay, let me get this going around, is a bent nail. And I would invite you to guess what it is. The chance of you being able to guess are slim. Benares is a city on the river, and much of the income is generated by boat people. People who go, who fish for a living, people who carry tourists or pilgrims for a living, people who work with boats. Every boat has what they call a spirit nail. Okay, and so this was a spirit nail that the wholesaler sold to me, saying that it was used to cast a spell on the business of a boat owner that one wanted to destroy his business. And so that's what it is. So this would be then another example of sorcery, not to cause death or anything like that, but in a way that is unique. Generally, magical theories do not talk about boat spirits, a nail that actually holds the spirit of the boat. The more traditional kind of magic is when I went to get a haircut, I noticed that the barber left, it was on the street, and the barber left all the hair there. Okay, so by the end of the day, the whole space is covered in hair. And then the boy who helps him scoops it all up and takes it away from the city. And so I asked him, why don't you have him clean it one at a time so that it's not this huge carpet of hair? That because if it's not mixed, then somebody could take a hold of the hair, right, and manipulate it to bad effects on the person to whom it belongs. But when it's mixed, they can't do that. They don't know who the hair belongs. That would be a much more traditional understanding of the way contiguous kind of magic operates. One January day, not actually, it wasn't a day, it was several weeks. January is the month in Benares that the river is at its lowest point. It's the dry season. It's not the most dry season, but it's very shrunk. And I saw a Naga sadhu on the sand in a tent with an American initiate. The American initiate was almost completely naked, and the sadhu had the American with a collar and a leash, walking around the city like a dog, including going to concerts. January is also the month of classical Indian concerts in Benares. And he would go to the concerts with this American. The reason I know he was American is not because I talked to him, but he was built like an American, right? He was large and masculine. Could have been German, I suppose, but not likely. And I never had a chance to interview them, but I did wonder what would it take for somebody from the West to be so passionate to want to become an initiate of somebody like a Naga sadhu, to the point where this humiliation was something that he was willing to put up with. Okay. What is the goal? What are the means? And how motivated must you be to want to do that? This is maybe the kind of thing that Natalia had in mind when she says walking with what?
Yogis.
Yogis, walking with yogis on all four, with a leash and a collar around your neck. So that was a very, to me, a very disturbing image, but maybe I'm wrong to judge it, right? Finally, this man lives in Santa Barbara, California, and in my opinion, he's the most spiritually advanced Indian that I've ever met. Okay. As you can see, Swami Vidyadeshananda, and he got his PhD in University of Chicago in physics, and then he was discovered as somebody with extraordinary spiritual potential. He went back to India. Went to a Shankara monastery and became a Swami, I suppose the equivalent of becoming a rabbi, and is an extraordinarily liberated consciousness as far as I can tell. And the reason I say that is because I spent a whole afternoon with him in West Virginia, of all places, sitting together in a house. He was going to give a talk later that evening, so I spent the entire afternoon with him. And there's a quality in him that you don't see in the picture, where you feel like you're falling into a huge space of love, joy. And I'm probably more cynical than any of you guys here, maybe with the exception of Professor Head. Uh, uh,
True.
nonetheless, I was a goner for him. But I have to give
I'm
you
sorry, you were a what?
a goner.
A goner,
For
okay.
him. Yeah. It's like imagine your 14-year-old daughter when suddenly, what's the name of that singer that everybody the one
Bad
what?
Bunny?
What?
Bad Bunny?
That shows up in a room completely smitten with this man. And so we were sitting in the living room, and the hostess was frying onion to make dinner, and he freaked out. He said, "Are you serious? You're frying onion? Don't you know who I am?" And she got really upset because it's hot food, not hot temperature. Yes, it's completely unacceptable to him. And I thought, wow, that's weird. He seems pretty angry about that. And then he asked me where I was from originally, and I said Israel. And he said, well, we have something in common. We hate Arabs, don't we? We hate Muslims. And I said, I don't really. And he said, well, if it comes to that, we'll have to nuke Pakistan. And it makes you wonder.
You see why I'm cynical.
Exactly. You have to wonder what exactly is the truth. Okay. Does being a person who can attain the highest level of rarefied consciousness mean that when you're not in that state of sadhana, that you are an angel, a holy man, a Gandhi? Does it mean that? Well, that's an open question. In the entirety of my years in India, I've never met somebody who had the amazing magnetic effect on me as Vidya Deshananda, or Swami Vidya Deshananda, and yet he was capable of saying those things. So that's it. I'm done. Safe travels. Any questions or comments? Oh, and let me show you a couple other things. This is called a kavach. Inside is a little mantra. You wear this and it protects you from possession, from evil spirits. Okay. And this one is a cheaper one. Instead of having a mantra, it has a very complicated design. And the complicated design is a protector. It keeps you safe from possession.
Does it work?
For me, it has worked over the years. Yeah, I haven't been possessed yet. I have possessed others, though.
I have a question, but before that, I think the necklace with the gems, one represents Mars and the other one represents Mercury, so the colors.
Okay. Okay.
The question is, in terms of the exorcisms, did you see any instance where a person is healed, but then they fall back into the same situation where the parents are not accepting or whatever, and then come back possessed again?
Many.
Oh, wow.
Many. All of them female.
Right.
All of them female. Yeah.
Okay.
Victor Turner talks about social dramas, and this is a perfect illustration of it. But you have to add a different conception of personality and theories of self. Right? For us, we think of the personality and the self as somehow integrated and individuated. The identity of the young Indian, or even the traditional Indian, is much more open, such that the boundaries are much more vulnerable to the presence of another personality. And it doesn't, the exorcism doesn't always work the first time.
Yeah.
I have a few questions. One, and most important, okay, so the president of the department died, right?
Yeah,
But did your Israeli friend get audited?
no,
Wow.
no, he wasn't,
That's-
he did not get on. Yeah.
Okay, I wasn't sure just
Uh-huh.
from, you said he died, but
Yeah.
I didn't know if that meant
Yeah.
that he ultimately didn't
Yeah,
get on
no.
or contributed towards.
It saved him a lot of money.
Another question is, okay, so you said the a lot of the exorcisms or a lot of the possessions are social dramas,
Yeah.
or can be described
Right,
possibly
right.
as social dramas.
Right.
Does anyone later or during those possessions or those exorcisms express that idea? Like, hey, we know this looks like this. We know this looks like a possession, but it's actually just she wants a new car. And then my final question is, thank you very much for pointing out with this gentleman in terms of his Islamophobia. It just reminds me a lot of like other examples of mystical people and mystical writings that are so beautiful. And yet, for example, Bernard of Clairvaux, like being so pro crusades,
Right,
or
right.
a ton of Sufi mystics
Right.
expressing terrible things against
Yeah.
Jews and Christians,
Right.
or Jews and Christians.
Right.
But yeah, not really a question, but it kind of helped.
Yeah.
It's something to think about.
Yeah.
Like you being pulled in by the beauty, the charisma of him,
Yeah.
and then having him say
Right.
such bigoted
Yeah.
thing. So
As far as the second question, no.
Mm.
The theory of mind at play with the people who are there is that in fact she is invaded by some other presence. They're not necessarily spooked by it because it's not a demonic. I do have to say that Benares does in fact have demons, all right, pishach, right, that can possess you. For example, Banarsis will tell you never pick up anything on the street, a coin, because there's probably a trapped spirit that could be an evil spirit. Or if you go to the toilet under a tree or by a bush, the city is populated by spirits of the dead, cremated dead. But in this context, it's almost always recognized as a relative. Yeah. And so they're not really freaked out by it.
It's
What's
like your aunt staying at your house for too long.
well,
Except it's your-
yeah, your aunt will have to be, she has to be dead.
Right.
Right. Yeah. And there has to be something quirky about her.
Mhm.
Uh,
As is true of most aunts.
I have a number of questions, but the first question I have is about, and it's kind of, I would like to invite you to kind of reflect generally on this, is kind of contiguity relations
Yeah.
in magical phenomena.
Right.
And I'm wondering, do you have anything generally to say about kind of how the mind works in that area?
Yeah. So you know that the classical theory of Fraser is either touch or similarity. Those are the two modes. Contemporary theories of magic are different. In other words, what is it that makes somebody feel that a magical causality took place? I look at it as a social cognition, social emotional cognition in social groups where reciprocity is a very big social value. So, for example, if I give you something in a society like, for example, Benares, if I give you something, you must reciprocate. It's understood that there's a massive force of obligation to reciprocate. And if you got something and you don't know who you got it from, you assume that there was an intentionality behind that places nonetheless some kind of expectation on you. This is one example of social cognition, where social cognition is at play. Causality is understood as something that one thing can have an effect on the other because I experience things that cause other things without necessarily having to have a disassociated or so-called objective causality at work. I just expect that an act produces some kind of a result. Okay. My mother believes in magic, for example. So if my mother wakes up in the morning and she has a horrible back and she didn't do anything to create the back pain, she will tell me, and she has told me, that there's a Bedouin village next to our house, and one of the Bedouins said he was going to paint her house, and they agreed that he was going to paint her house, but then she found a cheaper one. So the cheaper one did it. He caused her back pain through a woman, his aunt or some other woman in the village who my mother knows to have the power to cause that
Mhm.
that kind of a thing. Sorcery. Where does it come from? Well, in the case of my mother, she doesn't live in a reciprocal kind of society, but she's a narcissist. And narcissists share that kind of rationality. I'm serious. Narcissistic thinking is very close in its structure to transactional, reciprocal societies.
Another question I have, and I don't want to,
Yeah.
displace any others, but so regarding the agoris, so one question related to that is kind of a linguistic thing. So agora is a title of Shiva,
Right.
and I'm just wondering if you happen to recall, is the first vowel of agora, is it long? Like in the agori, I was just trying to look it up in one of the It's a short one. Okay.
Oh, I don't have it here.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so why?
Well, it's sometimes because you have a certain class of derivatives that have I that anyway.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, but it's a derivative of a title of Shiva. Okay.
Yeah.
So what I'm wondering about is with this group, what is the origin of their unwillingness to abide by the purity laws? I mean, this, yeah.
Okay. So I thought I had a picture there, maybe in a newer version that we didn't upload. Baba Kinaram Sthal ashram. Baba Kinaram is the founder of the Aghori sect. Okay, and in Banaras,
When did he live? This
he was born around 1600.
okay.
Yeah, they say he lived for 170 years. But so it's 17th century. Okay. And he lived in Benares, and he founded an ashram there. And what takes place in this ashram, in addition to meditation and practices that we would call spiritual, is charity. The monks go around the city. Benares has neighborhoods where untouchables live. And they go into the untouchable neighborhoods serving food, cleaning the streets, cleaning the public toilets. In other words, it's an exemplar of social work of an extraordinary kind of level, inspired by him, by Baba Kinaram. And so when people hear Aghori, usually think of the horrific, man with a skull. And if I had the other image, at the gates to the ashram, you see skulls. But what goes on in the ashram is social work, actually. The kind of social work the Brahmins wouldn't do because of purity. So it's not a horrific, it's a terrific kind of sect. And that part is not based on an understanding of Shiva. Shiva is not that kind of a god. By the way, the assumption that because it's modeled on Shiva, it can't be this kind of social workplace it brings up modernism, brings up the question of modernism. It's a modernistic kind of impulse to turn impurity into social work.
Right, okay. And regarding the kind of the modernistic element here, I'm wondering, and my final question is about like the American who is having himself initiated, right? So the way in which he was being initiated, like, and the kind of, for lack of a better term, like ritual humiliation, right?
Yeah.
Do you suspect that that is some sort of kind of appropriation from Western culture as a sort of, image of, kind of domination? Or is that something, or do you think
Yeah.
that sort of, that behavior with the collar and all of that, is there any sort of traditional basis to that behavior?
Well, the normal diksha doesn't look like the initiation doesn't look like that.
Right, that's what I'm
Yeah,
wondering about.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I have a feeling that there might be some tantric elements there, and but as far as I've never heard of this kind of a practice ever before. It might be precisely because the guy was an American.
Mhm.
He had to get rid of the American in him.
Right.
I think maybe you watched Pulp Fiction. I don't know if you watched the movie.
I saw Pulp Fiction.
Oh, at the end of Pulp Fiction.
Oh, there's a,
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I'm wondering about. Like,
There's a dog scene?
No,
The-
no. There's the GIMP scene.
The GIMP, yeah.
I mean, I'm sure there are other things. It kind of reminds me of other things that, well, that
Yeah.
exist. Right?
Yeah, yeah.
So when you talk about the possession of women,
Yeah,
it kind of reminds me of like there's like a wave of, they call it hysteria of women, I think in like the 15th and 16th centuries where,
yeah,
they kind of showed these,
Yeah.
this kind of behavior.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's a lot of like sexual repression. So some people say it's a sign of women showing their agency or power. But also, like there was Charles Taylor, the philosopher, he said that it appeared at a time when the conception of the self began to, as you said, like the idea of a much more porous self, as he says, transition into this more self-contained idea of the self as being within me.
right.
And that phenomenon is like kind of a rebellion against that
Right.
new trend. I was wondering if maybe in India, you also have, like what we're seeing now, what you witnessed is part of a kind of trend, or if this is something that existed consistently throughout.
Yeah, there's a book by Fred Smith on possession in India that traces it all the way to the Vedic times. The entirety of India's cultural history, and he gathered all the cases in the literature of possession and exorcism. And so it's been there a long time. But the psychology of the Indian person, of course, it's changing. And all of this was 1992, 1994. So that too is I mean, we're at a period where with the technology that we have today, since let's say the late 90s, with the internet, then cell phones and so forth, that India has changed, become westernized to a degree that is the equivalent of the previous 150 years. So that's going to disappear really fast. There's no doubt about it. But back in the 1990s, it was unbelievably common, incredibly common. On any given day, there were dozens of exorcisms, both Islamic, both Muslims and Hindu. And they could go to, say, Baba Bahadur Shaheed was a Muslim saint. And then there's Durga temples. So it could be a Hindu place or a Muslim place, and the customers, so to speak, were of both religions every day. It completely transcended that kind of identity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you wanna ask something?
You go. No.
I am interested in what you witnessed concerning altered state of consciousness or expanded state of
Yeah.
consciousness. So
Yeah.
it seems that it was very common
Yeah.
in your field work. And I understand that people get to those expanded state of consciousness
Yeah.
through various means, right?
Right.
So you mentioned Ashish, for
Yeah.
instance.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that at that time you also participated
Yes.
in this.
Yes.
So from a methodological perspective,
Yeah.
is there anything that you experienced during those altered state of consciousness that helped you to understand your field work in a particular way?
Yeah. There were. By the way, the first time I had altered states of consciousness is in India. When Natalia introduced me, she said I worked in Pune. Well, when I was there, it was Pune. So 1982, 83, I lived in Pune for 1 year, where the ashram of the Rajneesh Osho was. There's a huge ashram, and it had the sensory deprivation tank. I did not take any substances, but I went into the sensory deprivation tank, and I had almost immediately massively altered states of consciousness of extraordinary strength. So that was first. In Benares with hashish, which I think is stronger than marijuana, I had experiences where alteration in the connection between my body and mind. So, for example, I became aware that when I do something, that I do it before I intend to do it. The intention to do something happens after I'm already doing it. Okay. And which altered my sense of time and also my sense of agency. Okay. It alerted me to the fact that the captain of the ship isn't really in charge. Okay. So it's a kind of a small depersonalization experience, I would say. I didn't have visions. I've had since then, I've been, even before, I've been meditating for a very long time, and I have experiences of separation from the body on my own. Okay. At the time in Benares, it was the hashish that gave me these really strange separation between my mental self and my body self, and constant loops in time kind of going in these circles constantly. And with that kind of, if you take those states of mind seriously, then causality becomes a different kind of experience, cause and effect. It turns out that the effect can precede the cause. I see it in myself, then I'm going to see it in other people too. Yeah. But it's not like mushrooms, psilocybin or any of those kind of things. That I didn't see being used there, unfortunately. Yeah. Yeah.
I was just gonna say that I think the possession stuff, like, it's fascinating because in cognitive psychological literature, a sense of agency is inversely correlated with attribution to supernatural agents.
Right.
So like that's exactly what's playing out here, it seems.
Right.
And I guess they don't, the individuals who are going through it don't have an escape plan, so they're really stuck then, you're saying?
Yeah, other than the fact that the exorcist can help them out.
Right, right.
Yeah. The experience with the exorcist is like a trial or a conflict resolution. Sometimes he uses a stick, not so much with the girls, but with all the women and men, he whacks them on the back with a stick.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
not to the point where it's super painful, but I think it kind of alerts them. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, I guess my concern is then what do they do when they go back? Because they're just going back into the same situation over and over again, right?
Yeah.
Hmm.
So, yeah, so if they're stuck, they'll get possessed again.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. There's no guarantee.
Right.
There's nobody offers guarantee, and you don't pay. You bring food or something like that. Yeah.
I see.
Nobody in Varanasi offers guarantee.
Okay.
Yeah. There was one incident I saw in a newspaper. I didn't see it myself of a woman who had a reputation of reviving the dead. She was said to have incredibly strong spiritual powers, and so a person in the family died, and she couldn't revive him. And so, what do you think the family members said when she couldn't revive?
Killed?
What?
They killed her?
Well, they threatened to kill her, but what were they thinking?
I would guess she didn't want to revive.
Exactly. It didn't undermine their assumption that she can revive. Okay. What it did was they felt that there's some reason why she won't do it in this case, and they threatened to kill her. It was she had to be saved. Yeah.
Like there are some certain places in the world, like Varanasi, or I don't know, Bali in Indonesia, like Machu Picchu, they're like considered to be more like magical, or where people like tourists go for some spiritual awakening. Like, why do you think these certain places, like scientifically, or just like your opinion?
Why is Benares one of those places?
Yeah, or like what makes this place, what made it so like be like the spiritual, and like why did you ever think like what it connects to any like other places in the world where also like people believe in magic or
Yeah.
is it?
That's an interesting question. In the case of Benares, you ask somebody from there, they'll tell you this is where the river came from heavens to Shiva's hair, and from Shiva's hair down to the earth, right there where Benares is. So they would say, they would give a sacred narrative. There are other places in India that are sacred for other reasons, like Ayodhya, because Rama was born there. Northern California, Mount Shasta. Any of you been to California?
Yeah, what about, why are you bringing this up?
Well, she asked about other places that are sacred.
Oh, are you from Mount Shasta?
No.
No, I mean, well, that's where my wife's family is from, and well, she's from Reading, but there's this professor called Martin Schwartz who lives. He's a retired Berkeley professor, and he works on Avestan. And yesterday I shared he addressed my class via Zoom. He lives there anyway.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Well,
but
yeah, well, everybody knows that alien energy comes to our planet through Mount
I
Shasta.
didn't know that.
You gotta go there.
Okay, well,
So
Your wife might be.
yeah, she might be one of them.
it's the tallest single standing mountain in the lower 48 states. It's about 14,000 feet high. It looks like Mount Fuji or something like that. And I lived for a while in Southern Oregon, and so everybody knows that this is the place. The cosmic forces
Wow.
entering the planet through and so you will see pilgrims, mostly hippies, and that sort of going up the mountain. It's a very difficult climb, celebrating the energy that's there. In Benares, it's the legend is the legend, but what is it that makes a place sacred? Calls into question theories in the study of religion. So, for example, Mircea Eliade talks about the cosmic axis,
Axis Mundi.
yeah, axis mundi, and things like that. The truth of the matter is that religion scholars don't know what makes a particular place sacred if you go far enough back in time. But Benares definitely is such a place.
With in Arizona, they have the Sedona. They also they have like this energy vortex.
Really?
I haven't been,
Energy
but
vortex?
I've
Yeah.
heard about it.
Yeah.
And like people
Yeah.
believe like there's some kind of like energy
Yeah.
field there.
Yeah. In Sedona, the real estate is expensive. Manchester, you can still buy homes for reasonable. but there's the forest fires there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So. Thank you very much, everyone. Oh, another question. Okay. Some question.
Just two.
Okay.
So, we mentioned how there was a porcupine, we started this conversation off by the ritual of pregnant women taking porcupines and then roasting
Yeah.
against their hair.
Yeah.
And you also mentioned porcupines again during the tenant
Right.
conversation. So my first question is, what's the importance of porcupines specifically as it relates to Varanasi? Are most rituals concerned with porcupines? What's the importance of that? My second question is, during your time in Varanasi, did you encounter sorcerers that had like a generational link, like their forefathers, their mothers, their aunt, whatever ancestors, also had a lineage of magical ties and sacred family rituals?
Good question. And the first one shows that you listen well. In the second case, quarrelsome animals, and therefore you have to have male and female. Okay. The other ritual, which is like 2,500 years old, you find it in the Grihya Sutra too. Why porcupine quill? It doesn't say. It's anybody's guess. I don't really know why porcupine quill. But in the middle of her pregnancy, the 5th month or so, they run the porcupine. There's the anuloma and pratiloma, one direction and the other direction, meant to symbolize something. Maybe I don't remember, and forgive me. It's possible that the mantra that they say from the other text, the Atharva Veda, just happens to mention porcupines, and so that's why they use that. As far as the other, yes, the other question, yes, it does run in certain families. It's part of the family business, so I've seen that definitely. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
And now there's falafel, traditional Indian food.
Yes, please join us for the reception in that room.
In reception. Very nice.
Hello. You were in that version.
One more day, I think.
Are you going tomorrow?